Okay, now we're going to get into the stuff that you probably came online looking for. Finding the value of a variable in an equation and solving equations. Okay, it's right there in the title. Now, before we begin going into finding the value of a variable in an equation or solving equations, it's important that you remember that there's a difference between expressions, which we learned this vocabulary term, expressions and equations. We solve equations, and that's what we're going to focus on in this video. What is the big difference between the two? Equations have an equal sign, and expressions do not. All right, so keep that in mind. Expressions do not have an equal sign, and equations do. And we solve equations. Whereas expressions, we compute. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let's move on down here. All right, so there's a big idea that I want to show you. Big, let's even make that a capital, big idea. There's a big idea when solving equations that you need to know. And before I give you that big idea, I want you to take a look at this. X plus 5 equals 12. Look at that problem. If you've got it in you, even pause the video and try to solve it. Then I'm going to give you the big idea. Okay, the big idea I'm talking about is when we're solving equations, we use inverse operations. Okay? We don't do any wizardry or guessing. We don't look at x plus 5 equals 12 and try to guess what that should look like. And use inverse operations is just a fancier way of saying do the, or let's say, undo math. Or arithmetic. Really what you're undoing is arithmetic. And we'll fill in the blanks on the rest of that. So now I'm telling you that the big idea is to use inverse operations. So I'm going to come at this problem x plus 5. I'm going to come at it from that framework. When we see x plus 5 equals 12, we want to do an inverse operation or undo maths or arithmetic. So what does that look like? Well, we see x plus 5 equals 12, so we're going to focus on the left side of the equation over here, the left side of the equation, x plus 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 5. Okay? Now, anything we do to one side of an equation when manipulating them, we must do to the other side. So I must also subtract 5 from this side. And we then get x equals 7. 12 minus 5 is 7. The plus 5 on this side was canceled out by the minus 5. Okay, great. We just solved an equation. We solved for the variable x by using inverse operations. Let's move down to another example or two. So you've now learned that we use inverse operations. Let's do another example. Y minus 4 equals 9. All right, and when we talk inverse operations, we have plus, minus, division, or actually let's put, and then we have multiplication and division. These are inverses of each other. Let me just simplify that a little bit just so it's clear. We're going to circle plus minus. Those two are inverses. And then these two are inverses. Opposite operations. Each undoes the other. So now we have y minus 4. When we see this problem, we want to think about doing inverse operations in order to get the variable y all by itself. If we can get the variable y to be on one side of the equal sign, that will allow us to solve the equation. So I'm going to approach this by adding 4 to both sides, and these two will cancel each other out, and this will become 13, and we still have equals, and we have y. So we did the same thing to both sides, and we did inverse operations. The inverse of negative 4 is positive 4. All right, let's take another example for a spin. Why don't we? 4x equals 20. Okay, so when you look here, the inverse of multiplication, which remember that this is multiplication, the inverse of multiplication is division. So how do you think we're going to approach this problem? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to divide. And we're going to divide both sides by the same number. And that number is going to be 4. Now, how do we arrive at 4? Well, we have 4 x's, and we want to isolate x by itself on one side. And when we divide 4x by 4, what we get is x. How many times does 4 go into 4x? It goes into it x times. Or if that's too much for you, just think about canceling the 4's. And that will equal, what's 20 divided by 4? 5. So we just solved for x in that equation. Now I'm going to give you one more example before we move on to practice. That example is going to be x divided by 3 equals 6. I hope you know which direction this is going, but we're going to use an inverse operation of division, which is multiplication over here, on both sides of the equation. So I'll put both of these in parentheses, and we're going to multiply by 3. Multiply by 3. 3 times x, we have x divided by 3, and we multiply it by 3, the 3's cancel each other out. So what we end up with is x equals, and then we do the same thing to both sides. So we have 3 times 6, which is 18. And we just solved that equation for x equals 18. So again, I want to reemphasize, when we see these problems, we want to think about how can we isolate the variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign using the inverse operations, plus or minus, multiply or divide. Now, let's move on to some practice. So here's your set of practice problems. Go ahead, give each one a go, solve it using the tools you've learned, and then I will solve them in rapid succession pretty quickly. If you feel lost or like you don't know what's going on, go back in the video a little bit, watch it again, and then try again. Struggle is part of the process. Okay, let's start with question number 1, top left, green. X plus 6 equals 14. We're going to use an inverse operation, which is minus 6. Minus 6. That will eliminate the 6 from the left side of the equation, and we'll get x equals 8. That equation is solved. Now we have n minus 3. We're going to again use the inverse, which is plus 3 to both sides. We will then have n equals 11. All right, moving up to top right. 5 multiplied by a equals 25. So we're going to approach this problem with division. We're going to divide both sides by 5. Okay? And then we get a equals 25 divided by 5 equals 5. Now for the last problem. Y divided by 4. As we've done time and again, we're going to approach it the same way. We're going to use an inverse operation of division. That would be multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 4, and we're going to do it to both sides. On this side, the 4's are going to cancel each other out, and it'll leave us with just y. And 4 times 7 equals 28, which is our final answer. So that's how we solve equations. Remember 2 key things. Use inverse operations. Anything you do to one side, you must do to the other. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.